Welcome to Have You Read It? The channel where we bring books to life, one summary at a time. Today, we are going to explore Nick Trenton's Stop Overthinking. 23 Techniques to Relieve Stress. Stop negative spirals, declutter your mind, and focus on the present. This book is all about understanding what overthinking is, identifying its causes, and, most importantly, providing practical techniques to overcome it. If you've ever felt trapped in a loop of endless analysis, worry, or negative thoughts, this episode is for you. Let's jump right in. What exactly is overthinking? According to Trenton, overthinking involves excessive analysis, evaluation, rumination, and worry to the point where it impairs your mental health. It's that feeling of not being able to stop your mind from racing, even when you want to. James, a character from the book, worries about a mole, then worries about his worrying about the mole. Overthinking amplifies itself, intrudes, and feels awful. Trenton identifies two main sources of anxiety that lead to overthinking: ourselves and our environment. Let's start with ourselves. Trenton explains that some of us are genetically predisposed to being more anxious than others. A 2019 study in Molecular Psychiatry argued chromosome 9 carries genes associated with the development of anxiety. But having these genes does not definitively mean you'll develop anxiety. According to Trenton, genetics accounts for only about 26% of anxiety's heritability, leaving 74% influenced by environmental and lifestyle factors. We may also become habitual overthinkers because it gives us the illusion that we're somehow tackling the problem we're overthinking about. Even though the overthinking never ends, we might still feel like we're making progress, which turns into a vicious cycle that can be hard to escape. Now, let's consider our environment. According to Trenton, one aspect of our environment is our immediate surroundings, such as our home and office. Cluttered, dimly lit, and noisy spaces can heighten anxiety. The second aspect involves broader socio-cultural experiences, like experiencing racism or sexism, which can lead to heightened anxiety and stress. Stress is something in the environment, an external pressure on us, whereas anxiety is our internal experience of this pressure. What are the consequences of overthinking? Trenton warns that the consequences of overthinking can be far-reaching, including physical, mental, and social harms that can become long-term issues. Physical symptoms include racing heart, dizziness, and muscle tension. Mental symptoms include fatigue, irritability, and nervousness. Socially, overthinking can damage relationships and lead to social withdrawal. Now that we understand what overthinking is and where it comes from, let's explore some techniques to combat it. Trenton introduces several strategies to distress and calm an anxious mind. One fundamental approach involves the 4 A's of stress management: avoid, alter, accept, and adapt. Avoid. This entails walking away from things we can't control. Some stresses are simply not worth the effort and are best removed from our environments altogether. Alter. If we can't avoid a stressor, we must learn how to change our environment to remove it. Trenton advises communicating your needs and feelings directly rather than suffering in silence. Accept. If we can't alter our environment, we have no choice but to accept it. Trenton notes that acceptance involves acknowledging your feelings and validating them. Adapt. Finally, if we can't do much about the situation at all, we must adapt to it and learn how to cope with our stressor and reduce its damaging potential to a minimum. Adapting may entail making lasting changes to our worldview. Another popular technique is journaling. Trenton suggests that when we overthink, we have tons of different thoughts swirling in our mind, which can feel overwhelming. When we write these thoughts down systematically, we can analyze them and evaluate whether they are merited at all. To build the habit, you can carry a pocket journal with you and write whenever you feel it's necessary. Trenton also highlights the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique, which is highly effective at stemming panic attacks. This technique engages all 5 of our senses. 5. Look around you for 5 things you can see. 4. Identify 4 things you can touch. 3. Acknowledge 3 things you can hear. 2. Detect 2 things you can smell. 1. Notice 1 thing you can taste. Engaging your senses distracts your brain from overthinking. Trenton points out that one of the biggest sources of our anxiety is poor time management. We tend to prioritize things that make us miserable and refuse to give enough time to things we really enjoy. Trenton suggests that we seldom take time out for adequate leisure and relaxation. So we must consciously do this to improve our anxiety levels. Some tips include making regular to-do lists, prioritizing tasks in order of preference, and breaking goals down into smaller steps. Trenton explores strategies that can help us manage our time better. One of these is Allen's input processing method. Inputs any external stimulus. Analyze and take note of how you respond to even the most minute stimulus, like calls or emails. Plan the best way to respond based on existing responses so that you can prioritize certain stimuli over others. Another useful technique involves SMART goals. Specific. Note your goals down in very specific details so you know exactly what to do. Measurable. Set up criteria for measuring how you'll know you've achieved this goal. Attainable. Make sure that the goal is attainable. It shouldn't be something outlandish. Relevant. Assess how this goal is relevant to your value system and what purpose achieving it will fulfill in your life. Time-bound. Set a time limit for completing this goal so that you do it in a reasonable amount of time. Trenton discusses techniques we can use when our anxiety is reaching a fever pitch. One such technique is autogenic training. Through autogenic training, we aim to gain control over our thoughts and emotions through 6 different exercises. To practice the first technique, find a comfortable place to sit or lie down. Then give yourself certain verbal cues, like I'm completely calm while breathing slowly and steadily. Feel the sensations in various parts of your body as you intermittently repeat the phrase to yourself. Trenton notes that though this technique might take some time to master, it's simple and can be done anywhere, anytime. A meta-analysis in applied psychophysiology and biofeedback showed evidence for the technique's effectiveness in treating a range of conditions, from hypertension to depression, asthma, migraines, anxiety, phobias, pain, insomnia, and more. Another technique is called guided imagery. Trenton states that, essentially, you find a comfortable position and think of a place that engages all your different senses, smell, sound, etc., in pleasantly stimulating ways. This can be any place. It just needs to be one that inspires relaxation. Picture it in as much detail as you can by making full use of your imagination. Trenton presents progressive muscle relaxation. This technique relies on the theory that physical relaxation leads to mental relaxation. The goal is to physically relax your muscles by first tensing them up. Sit in a comfortable position and go from head to toe or vice versa, tensing different parts of your body before relaxing and moving on. According to Trenton, many of us are stuck in specific negative thought patterns that cause a lot of anxiety. Cognitive behavioral therapy can help you identify these thought patterns and replace them with more positive attitudes, which will significantly improve your mental health. The first thing you need to do is identify the different cognitive distortions you might be falling prey to. Some common distortions are black and white thinking, where you perceive everything in extremes, and discounting the positives to disproportionately focus on the bad in any given scenario. There is a long list of such distortions, and we likely employ several different ones together. After identifying the distortions, we can focus on what kinds of situations, people, or surroundings trigger specific thought patterns for you. You can use the dysfunctional thought record to keep track of the relevant details. Whenever you feel yourself slipping into a negative thought pattern, stop and identify the place, the situation or events that preceded the thought. What exactly the thought was and which type of distortion it was. Then think of a rational response to this thought. Trenton also gives us techniques to change these thought patterns. One way is through behavioral experiments. A simple way to use this technique is to clearly state your negative thought or belief. Then, form a hypothesis where you consider the possibility of it being false. Think about whether you have any evidence or past experience that might indicate that the belief is, in fact, false. Make observations that might point to the same, and if you find reasons to doubt your original belief, analyze them and make changes to your thought pattern accordingly. Trenton emphasizes that this book lays down a ton of strategies to help you cope with anxiety and overthinking. But the goal here isn't just to learn some tips and tricks. It's to have a more transformational impact by inducing a fundamental change in our attitudes and perceptions. There are 5 attitudes that you need to incorporate into your mindset. Focus on what you can control and not on what you can't. If you can control something, do it. But if you can't, there's no use worrying about it. In the end, there's nothing you can do, and the best strategy is to simply accept that and move on. Focus on what you can do, not on what you can't. What are the specific things you can and can't do in certain situations? Concentrate on what you have, not on what you don't. We often forget to appreciate all the good things we have at our disposal while focusing overwhelmingly on what's missing. We can correct this by consciously thinking of the good things in our life. Focus on what you need and not what you want, because the things you want will never end and will never be entirely achievable. This will help you focus on things that are absolutely necessary. Live in the present, not the past or the future, because what-ifs are the best way to fall prey to overthinking. Trenton also mentions a technique called the opposite action technique, which is doing the opposite of what your emotions tell you. We first need to dwell on what emotions we feel when we overthink, for example, fear, panic, uneasiness, shame, and observe them without resistance or clinging. We then identify the emotion and what thoughts it is causing us to have. If the thoughts aren't in line with our values, we identify the opposite emotion. Cultivate this emotional experience and steer our thoughts and behaviors in a healthier direction. Trenton's main takeaway is that while stress is a fact of life, overthinking is optional. By understanding the sources of our anxiety, implementing practical techniques, and shifting our attitudes, we can regain control of our minds and live more present, intentional lives. The key is to practice these techniques regularly, be patient with ourselves, and remember that change takes time. A few easy-to-remember heuristics from the book are: for I's, avoid, alter, accept, adapt. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engage your senses to ground yourself in the present. SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound. Thanks for watching. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss our next book dive.